here what your names are. If you're coming here in affiliation with a group or an organization, just feel free to put that in the chat. And if you want to put your contact information for folks, that's also welcome. Now's the time. So our topic today is community bike shops, and we have Tara Esquerdo here from Elmira Community Cycle, and incorrectly represented on the slide as cycles, sorry. I'm just gonna, let's see, go over what makes the community bike shop different. One thing that we've been really aiming to do in these conversations is to have this be an opportunity for people of a variety of experiences to learn about the topic. So maybe you're an expert on community cycle shops. Maybe this is a new topic to you. So everybody here is welcome on all your different levels of experience. So sometimes community bike shops are modeled as a cooperative or collective, not always. They're often under a non-profit or not-for-profit status. Some common names of popular examples are a bike kitchen or a bike hub. They're often volunteer run. They're typically free for participants or low cost. They usually rely on donations of new parts and used parts, and are pretty mission driven to reuse parts and materials. They're oriented towards being responsive to community needs, empowering community, and being a community resource or oriented in that way. We'll send the slides out afterwards, so there's some links for other examples or resources in there. So if you've registered, you'll get a link. If you didn't register and you find yourself here, just go ahead and register so you're on our list to send out. Okay. All right, does anyone have questions so far or feel moved to say anything? I just want to make a little space for that. Okay, cool. Let's see. So, Elmira Community Cycle. These are how you can reach Elmira Community Cycle, Elmira Bikes. And I'm gonna hand it over to Tara to share some pictures and talk about the experience of opening this really exciting space in Elmira.
Thanks, Grace.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? Excellent. My name is Tara Escudero. I live in Elmira, New York. I've been living here for 5 years. And since I moved here, I've been interested in starting a community bike shop. My experience is I'm a bicycle mechanic. I've worked in retail bike shops, community bike shops, the wheel industry, bike share industry, and nonprofits focusing on bikes. So a lot of different stuff. And I wanted to do something where I lived, and I wanted to do something that was not my job. And I wanted it to be volunteer run, and all of the actions and decisions be made by its members. So the first real steps I took were right before the pandemic. I started reaching out to a parent organization that I thought the bike shop could be a good program of. I thought it would be easier to become a program of a nonprofit than try and start a nonprofit. I still don't know if that's what I want to do, but ultimately, like, as people are getting more and more involved, I'm going to put that decision to everyone. Whether to be a nonprofit, I've worked for nonprofits, and I've had, you know, since like 2010, I've worked for several different nonprofits, and I have a lot of mixed feelings about them. And I feel like a lot of people in this session work for nonprofits, so I'm sure they have thoughts and feelings about that. So I'm still pretty resistant to making this a paid position for myself or formally making a nonprofit. But we did get a fiscal sponsor because we need to get grants and fundraise, or getting grants makes things a lot easier. So the Friends of the Chemung River Watershed is our fiscal sponsor, and there's one staff member. They're really cool. They are basically letting us use their status to apply for grants and helping us with like administrative needs. And I made that connection by using a free business incubator in Elmira called Incubator Works. When I was just asking, I just asked people I built relationships with over the last few years, like for advice on starting something like this, finding a space, fundraising, and someone referred me to the incubator, and they were great. They helped me put together a business plan, apply for grants, identify my needs, and just basically make connections with other people who can help me, foundations and stuff like that. So that's been great. So about a year ago, I started reaching out to an organization here. Then the pandemic happened, so kind of everything went on pause for a while. I reached back out, and they were not responsive, and I think that's just because they do so much programming already. So I was just like, all right, how do we do this otherwise? And that's when I got together with the incubator, got sponsored by the River Friends, and we found a space to rent, which was a huge piece of the puzzle. Again, that was just a personal connection. A friend connected me with the person they rent their housing from, and this person, his name is Tom, and he owns and lives above what was a bar for a very long time, and has been sitting vacant just for, I think, a year, partly because of the pandemic, partly because I think he was tired of living above a bar for a long time, which I can identify with. So he was like, oh, this sounds great. And he was like, I'll just charge you taxes and utilities. So it calculated what that would be. It's very affordable. It's $475 for a space, and it was a bar. So it has 2 individual bathrooms, a large front room, like a stage, even a kitchen, and like a few rooms in the back. So it's like, that's been unbelievably ideal. So the front space, we have on the bar, we have truing stands and a grinder and a vise. So that's a nice workspace. And then we have a few folding stands and folding tables as workbenches. And our volunteers put up bike racks on the wall. So all the bikes hanging on the wall vertically make a lot more room. And then the back rooms already had some shelving in there. So those are our parts rooms. As we strip bikes and get parts donated, we sort them in there. So that's what we've been doing so far. We've been in the space since February, and we posted our open hours on Google. And I put them on Facebook, but I still think they're not displaying. But we did that a few weeks ago. But we haven't done a lot of push for outreach yet, because there's still so many things we need to do to really be ready to receive a lot of people coming in. We're still finishing like tool boards and buying tools and really getting the volunteers comfortable with basic tasks that everyone should know, like changing a tube, truing a wheel, just those basic things, because those are like, if you have a few volunteers and they know how to do those things, and they know, and you make the same agreements or norms of how to operate the space, you're in pretty good shape. So we're still kind of working towards that. Most of the volunteers are people I know personally, which has been great, and a few people who just heard about it on the news. There was a few local news spots that they covered. We did a ride of silence. If you're not familiar, every year, the third Wednesday in May is a ride around the world to honor cyclists who have been killed on public roadways. So we did a ride for that and got some news coverage. So we got people interested in the shop then. And then they also covered when we were crowdfunding. So local news outlet, if you're trying to start or join a community bike shop, at least in Elmira, and I think a lot of other smaller cities, news outlets are really just looking for anything. And this is very appealing to them to do a little spot on thing like community projects like this. And I feel like this would be a whole other training, but talking about how to do those media spots is a lot of fun. And I think something I want to do with my volunteers, the main thing is answering questions you wish you were asked and not what you're actually asked. So let me just show you a few pictures. Let me see. Share screen. Yes. Okay. So these, they're not really in order or organized, but this is from a plant sale that we had. We had a volunteer offer to purchase a bunch of plants wholesale, and let's see, oh, that didn't work. There we go. And we had a bunch of local different businesses donate raffles. Here's people buying plants, and our volunteers. It was a great event. These are older pictures. So when I first moved here, I just made a Facebook page just to try and assemble people to do community rides together. And then we just turned that into the page for the community shop. So these are actually from a few years ago. This is from Ride of Silence a few years ago, 2 years ago, so the year before the pandemic. We had a great turnout. And then these pictures are more recent. So this is in the shop space, and the shop space already looks way different, which is crazy to think about. Oh, let's see. So,
Sarah, can I ask a question while you're looking?
go ahead.
So these things that you did before the bike shop was started, were they a part of an organization? Did I miss that? Or were they just sort of ad hoc things that got put together, like the rides and things?
Yeah, the ride things where I just made a Facebook page and told people about it, and they showed up. Not with the local bike shop, retail bike shop here. I would tell him, and he does things like that too. And it's really just like you tell people a place and a time, and they show up. So that's always fun. I definitely encourage people to do that in any capacity.
Cool.
Yeah. But yeah, these are our volunteers cleaning out the stuff that was a bar. And then like this is behind the bar. And so we just put all of our tubes on the shelves where all the glasses were. They were already fixing up some bikes. Cleaning, a lot of cleaning. That's the parts room, organizing our wheels. We already hung all the wheels up. So all these bikes are already hung up on the wall. I need to get some newer pictures, but this is one of the back rooms that just had this great shelving, the parts room, and we had this volunteer built a ramp into the space so that you can wheel bikes and other mobility devices up instead of having to step up a step. Yeah, I think that might be it as far as that goes. So I'm gonna stop my stop share. But yeah, so that's what I have as far as pictures. And we probably will have a grand opening event sometime next month, I think. Again, that's like, we're having somewhat regular volunteer meetings and kind of deciding what we want to do from there. And we still have to create like norms or bylaws or whatever you want to call them of how to make decisions and stuff. So a lot of it is just me instigating stuff and kind of feeling out what people want. And so that's been an interesting process because it's like I don't think any of the other volunteers are bicycle mechanics by trade. Some of them have some experience. So it's like, yes, I can offer all that, but I really want all the other decisions to be made collectively. And so far it's been good. I've gotten a lot of good feedback of how to get people to come on assign them different days for volunteering and how to physically organize the space and how to get the word out and all that kind of stuff. So it's been a great, just kind of, I don't know, just kind of a great way to spend my time. Yeah, I think I'm ready for questions. If anyone has anything specific.
There are a couple of questions in the chat. One is wondering if you kept the tap system or if you're keeping the tap system.
I did not. It was a kegerator that wasn't in the building. It was a separate unit and we just got rid of it, which I'm really happy about. The owner, I basically helped facilitate the owner of the property to sell it because I just felt like there wasn't a need for that and it took up a lot of room. And like, you know, I want it to be a relatively substance-free space for people who need that. And then if we were going to have things like that, it would be a pretty obvious so that if people didn't want to be around that, they could not. Should I just look at the chat or?
Well, there's one more. So Sean wondered, yeah, it is nice to have so much pre-built stuff like the bar and the bench. And is wondering if there's an expectation that the place will be restored if you move / evacuate this space. So like restored to a bar. Is that what you mean, Sean?
I think, yeah, I'm not sure what he means, but that's definitely possible because we didn't even drill into the bar for anything. We purposely made that decision to just use clamps and have free floating screwing stands, vise, and grinder. And the vise is really the only one you really need clamped on there. So we got, just from Harbor Freight, we got some clamps, and one of our volunteers sunk it into a piece of wood and cut the wood so that it sits within the lips of the bar. So it's really sturdy. So just being a little creative like that, because I'd like to think we can stay there a while, but you never know. And the bike, the main thing we did was drill into the wall to hang some bikes. But again, I feel like that's pretty, but the owner was pretty, the owner and the caretaker were pretty explicit that they don't plan to have a bar in there, at least when they own the property. So I'm hoping we can stay in there for a little while. Yeah.
Well, yeah, so the space, like you can take your infrastructure with you easily if you need to, and also you're preserving the space for the time being. Cool.
Yeah, and another kind of decision I made was to just, and I've communicated this and everyone else seems pretty receptive to it, is to have everything pretty easily movable. I bought one like actual shop stand with like a very heavy base plate just to have for very heavy bikes, and just to have one really stable, but the rest of our stands are folding stands. We have folding tables. All the bikes can be moved because it's a great space for events. So if we want to have an event on the stage or watch a movie, we have a big projector screen, so we can make that happen very easily. Yeah.
Cool. So for our bike recycling program in New Lebanon, this is from Mark. One of the key concerns of the volunteer mechanics is liability. So they're wondering how you're looking at legal risk.
Sure. So one of the lease that I signed to rent the space with the owner is pretty informal. The only stipulation really, besides paying the rent, he was like, get insurance. And that was really easy. I used the local insurance company here and just told them what we were doing in the space. Pretty affordable. I think it's like $500 a year or something like that. So we have insurance, but we're also going to have the policy that I am the last person to look at any bike before it leaves the space, because I'm certified. And a lot of the bike industry mechanics are not certified, but I happen to have gone to school. So I feel like that's just another, like, it looks good, and it makes sense to make sure things are safe. And I feel like once I feel really comfortable with other volunteers safety checking bikes, like we'll make that a process to get to that point. And we also already had discussions like how many people do we want in the shop at one time. What we came up with so far, because of just the liability of fixing bikes and having them be safe and COVID, is no more than one more participant than volunteers. So if there's me and 2 other volunteers, so there's 3 of us in the shop, then we'll have 4 participants max. And then a total cap of 10 people in the shop at the same time. And it's a pretty decent sized space, and we have an outdoor space too that's kind of fenced in, which is nice. So I think that's a good start, and like a lot, and most of our agreements are like, well, we'll see how this goes and we'll change it if we need to. So yeah, having safety checks on every bike that goes in and comes out, and communicating with people that if they bring a bike and they don't finish it, that we advise them that they should not ride it yet. And these are the other things that it needs, because you can't force people to do things. Time runs out, this and that. Yeah.
Cool. So there's like some practical legal liability stuff, and also some opportunities for learning, like kind of baked into that. It's kind of what I heard you saying. Yep. Yeah. I see, Kareem, I see your hand raised. Feel free to jump in.
There were also some questions in the chat, but yeah, I did want to just say.
Sure. Yeah, I think we have time to get to all of it. So,
okay. Yeah. I wanted to say a few things. One is, it's so exciting to see this, Tara, and how you're pulling this off with this group of volunteers. It's really exciting, and in Elmira, it's so cool. I wanted to just mention, and maybe this is obvious to, or maybe some people know about this, but I see Nia's here, and I know Southside Community Center is sort of re-envisioning the next phase for the bike shop that's connected with Southside. And also on this call, there's Thomas Petlock and Benjamin Nadon Enriquez, and they're 2 interns who are doing research over the summer on community bike shops that serve underserved communities. And with the hope that it'll be useful both for Southside and envisioning anything else that might be useful in the community. So just wanted to sort of point that out, and just in case connections during or after the meeting would be good. And yeah, I've been in touch with Siobhan about this and folks from Bike Network Tompkins and so on, but hoping that the questions and the research that Thomas and Benjamin do can also sort of unearth some useful insights for other community bike shops in the area, like around serving underserved young people, adults, enhancing transportation access, for providing workforce training, and so on. My specific question for you, Tara, is around the costs, the startup costs, your goal. Like, do you have a specific number of goal of how many bikes you'd like to fix up over the course of the year? And like, does your space work for that? I know with Ribs, space was always a limiting factor in terms of the capacity there. So yeah, so like goal and number of folks and startup costs for all that equipment.
Great, thank you for the comments and questions. And yes, I worked at Ribs for Southside Community Center from 2018 to 2019. And I also visited a bunch of other community bike shops in New York State and in other parts of the country and Canada when I was just in my general interest throughout the last 10 years, but also then specifically when I was thinking of starting this, I visited those. So the folks who are doing research, if they want to ask me about any of those, I'm happy to talk about that afterwards or later. And then so money and parts and bikes. So in our situation, we put together a budget with the business incubator and then with our fiscal sponsor, and we started, we applied for one grant with Outright Foundation so far, and we're gonna apply for other grants because why not? But this grant would match the first $5,000 that we raised. And we're supposed to hear back about that any day now, so really hoping. But even if we don't get that, we crowdfunded $6,500 just from our community, which is like mind-boggling. And it's like almost, I mean, if this wasn't our first year and we didn't have to initially buy tools and supplies, that covers a year's rent and more. So yeah, I just asked people for money, and the platform we used was Classy, which I've never used before, and that's what the Outright Foundation paired with. I guess they partnered with them to do this matching grant. It seems pretty similar to like, you know, GoFundMe and things like that. So that's how we got money. How we got a lot of our parts and bikes is actually because Ribs is kind of revamping. They were cleaning out. They had a lot of excess, and they've had a lot of excess for a while. And they were very generous. We got just some of the excess of their bikes and parts, and it's like an amazing start. So we have more than enough bikes to fix up for people to adopt and for people to fix up themselves as project bikes. So our programming is going to be pretty similar to model of Ribs, because that's where I spent the most time, and I thought most of their programming, the way they did things was good. So basically, if you walk in, if you have your own bike, you can work on it, and we provide the space, tools, and the education to make sure it's safe. If you don't have a bike and you just want to get one and not work on it, we have bikes that myself and other volunteers have worked on. And usually if all our bikes are donated, so if we get bikes and they don't need as much repairs, those are the ones we focus on getting out. So we try to have that effluent of physical stuff to maintain and grow the non-physical stuff, if that makes any sense. So just having bikes between like, you know, $40 and $150 is generally price range, because I went and looked at other community bike shops and so I think what we're going to do is have different color tags where we tag the bikes with, and a sign will show what that suggested donation is for that bike, the range, sliding scale. Everything is by donation. And these are still conversations I have to have with our fiscal sponsor, like how do we phrase things, because we're not really selling anything for a really set price. But how we're doing it is like, oh, you don't have $5 to get a new tube, you can donate any amount of money and take this used tube that's in perfect condition. So stuff like that. So that's where we got our bikes and parts. And then also, I've just like, we've crowdfunded a bunch of money. We haven't got it yet. And then we fundraised money from a plant sale. And just from the last month of donations, we've fundraised some, I think like less than $2,000, but still a good amount of money. So I'm already, have already reimbursed other volunteers who have went and bought like pegboard and zip ties and whatever, lumber. And then I have just, honestly, I've just put up like, I don't know how much money on my credit card buying stuff and just kind of hoping I can pay myself back because it's just what I want to do. If you don't want to do that, I don't know. I'm sure you can find some other way to do it, but that's what I've done. So I'm hoping I can pay myself back. And one thing that I did was I went to estate sales and yard sales. So I went, someone in Buffalo was like, hey, a bike shop is closing in Niagara Falls. So I drove up to Niagara Falls and like got a bunch of stuff there that would have been really hard to find otherwise, because also the retail bike industry is kind of like turned upside down because of the pandemic. You know, other things like lumber, electrical, pretty much anything, price has gone up or the shortages. If you go to a retail bike shop right now and order a new bike, depending on, like in Elmira, if you order a new bike from the retail bike shop here, you're going to wait a year or two. It's bonkers. And I think honestly, it just means that it's like more for the time for community bike shops, because so many bikes are wasted, and diverting as many bikes and parts from the landfill and getting them people's hands is really important right now. So yeah, I went to some yard sales and estate sales, and then some stuff you just have to order new. But you know, that's kind of the last resort. But like, we just ordered some stuff and we're not going to have to buy it again. Truing stands, shop stands, like derailleur hanger straighteners, you know, stuff like that. You buy it and hopefully it doesn't break. And that's that. So those are the kind of purchases we're making right now. And yeah, I think I covered all that.
Yeah, I'm hearing so much of like, yeah, like the word community being reflected in all the things you're saying, how they're showing up for you. Yeah, there's like kind of a variety of questions in the chat, so I'm sort of trying to.
I can see the last one that just popped up. I'm certified. So I went to United Bicycle Institute. Being certified in the bike industry, I wish it was more like being an electrician or something, where you'd be an apprentice and then you're in a union or something. Bike mechanics are incredibly unorganized and underpaid, and it sucks, especially in regions like this where we're just pretty spread out. But I was working at a retail shop in Houston, and you know, I just get tired of like having to ask other people how to do stuff. So I crowdfunded my way to school. This was in 2014 or something like that. And I went to United Bicycle Institute in Portland, Oregon. That campus is not there anymore. Their original location in Ashland has been and is still there. I think Portland got too expensive to have a bike school in, which is crazy. But so I went there for the month of June back in like 2015 or 2014. And I spent the month there going to school, and Pedalapalooza was then. So I went to all these different bike events and visited bike shops there and just like inundated myself with bike stuff. And going to school was great. It was an immersion school, so it was like a few weeks, right? So that basically gave me the foundation of how to learn how to do everything. If you're not working in the industry and repeatedly doing repairs, like it's kind of a waste. So they have a scholarship for women and trans folks at United Bicycle Institute, which is awesome. And you have to already be working in the bike industry, which sounds kind of restrictive, but it's like, otherwise it's like, how do you know that investment is going to be worth it? So I think that's a good idea. So that's where I went. So, and that really helped. Not so much getting jobs, I think, but just my skill and just my confidence. So.
Said United Bicycle. Will you just say it one more time?
United Bicycle Institute. Maybe I'll just scroll up here.
Hector was wondering about the connection to Outride, how working with Outride is, how that connection was made. You mentioned them. I don't think you spoke to that, though.
Sure. So I literally just went on Google and Googled like bicycle grants, and they popped up. So I don't know. I follow them on social media. They seemed like they had a good grant opportunity, and they focus really on getting kids on bikes and kids programming, which is something we also want to do. We want to have like kids only nights, and then like LGBT night, and like the things like that. Like once we have enough people regularly coming, where you can have that intersection. So yeah, I just applied for a grant. So well, I'll let you know. I'll let you know how it is working with them. Yeah, and some of the other grants I'm going to apply for are more local, like here, like the Community Foundation, the McDonald Foundation are things in upstate New York that try to fund stuff here. Elmira is incredibly poor, Chemung County, very poor. All the kids here get school lunch for free. Our public transit has been free since last year. And I think those are good things. But yeah, I mean, they're really just trying to fund anything here like this. So I'm hoping to take more advantage of that. A struggle is like, yeah, I'm not being paid to do any of this and I have to work for money. So just making time to sit down and do paperwork stuff has been limited. But you know, we'll figure it out. And again, a lot of other volunteers have been doing anything from, you know, I have electricians and 3D printers and all like people doing all kinds of stuff. And some of that is like administrative and IT stuff. So that's been awesome, just who's showed up and what skills that they have. Someone asked about the bike lane situation in Elmira. How's it impact community bike shop? So, I mean, moving here from Houston, it's like people aren't trying to hit me. So that's just an improvement. There's a few like bike lanes and they're like restoring. So I think most people are in the Ithaca area over there. So Elmira, about 45 minutes south, it's on the Chemung River, and the city is right around the Chemung River. So there's like 5 or 6 bridges that go across the river that connect the city. And one of those bridges was deemed not safe for cars decades ago. So they're finally rebuilding it or like restoring it, and it's going to be pedestrian and bike only, which is just like wild. And I really hope they finish it this year because they're supposed to. But they also decided to not finish that and then to start work on the Main Street Bridge. So now we have pedestrians and cyclists going on the really dangerous Clemens Center Parkway because there's only 2 other options like in the opposite ends of town. So like a lot of like inefficiency and corruption on the county and state level here. Super fun, and not a ton of bike infrastructure, but just like not a ton of traffic either. There's also a nice bike path that goes like 20 miles from here to Lauman, which is kind of nice, but it's like out and back. And then there's Catherine Valley Trail that kind of starts past Horsehead. So it's in Chemung County and goes Watkins, but they need to connect. So there's a lot of potential, and I think the risk generally here is lower. And so many people here ride bikes because it's like a very low cost primary vehicle. So a lot of people, like the trailer is set up here, people have constructed and are carrying around, like I've seen people move from house to house and they're just carrying all their furniture, and it's not someone who has like a Surly, it's someone who has like a Walmart bike that's like 20 years old that they have continued to maintain, and it's kind of bonkers. And those are the kind of people I'm really looking forward to working with when they come in the shop. So some of the outreach we haven't done yet that I would like to do is like when I first moved here, I just like I was like, where's the place where people who are recovering from substance abuse are? And I went to that house, and of course they had a bunch of bikes, and I just fixed the bikes for them because I was like, I know this has to be a good idea. So I did that. So I want to go back to that place and give them flyers with their hours and like outreach to them specifically. And then other places in the area that give out free meals. There's like a whole free meal schedule here. And just I like physical outreach, flyering and speaking with people like that. That's how we actually got a few volunteers. I just saw someone riding a bike in the street and I was like, hello. So that is really effective because if you only use social media, you're only going to get people who use social media, and that's not enough. So yeah, I just went in outreach, but let's see what else we got here, unless anyone else has questions.
So Peg has her hand raised, and there's also a question about gear exchange and part sourcing. You've sort of talked to the sourcing, but not so much to the gear exchange.
Gear exchange sounds like a level of money that I'm not connected with here, like people who have group sets to trade and stuff like maybe, but I feel like that's something the retail bike shop might facilitate if they were to, or there's just something down the road. It's just not as much a priority of like why we're putting in all this work. But it sounds like a nice idea. But I just like, for me, it's like real community engagement, you start with working class people in poverty and you work your way up because they need it less. So, and Peg, did you have a question?
Yeah, my question was, let me remember it. Oh, so your location in Elmira, are you located near, you know, like a central business district? Are there other things near you? I know you talked a little bit about the bridges, but.
Good question. So yes, we are right downtown, which is awesome. We are right near Elmira College and Hilliard, which is just like one of the large manufacturing things here. So there's like the main cross street, I would say in Elmira, is like Water Street right on the river, on the north side of the river, and Main Street. So if you go a few blocks up Main Street, there's a big new roundabout where the grocery store and the pharmacies and the gas station, and you go like another block and we're like right there. And then the college is like another block away. So it's just like, yeah, it's a great location, not on a main street, on like two little back streets. So nice to like, and we have this little parking lot across the street that's owned by the property owner, so we can congregate there for rides. So super ideal, super near a lot of people that could really use the services. So I couldn't have asked for, I think, a better setup.
Thank you.
Yeah. Maybe there's some way to gear exchange generate funds community bike shops. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, put our wrap our heads around that. So Glenn, you asked like, are cyclists really targets in Houston? I wanted to it caused me to immediately remember on our call about the Idaho stop, somebody stuck around afterward who was targeted in a different way. Like she was in a really rural area, no one was around, and she rolled through a stop sign and she was pulled over and ticketed by the police, and there was literally no other bikes or cars around. He was just enforcing the law. So so that I would maybe argue is a type of targeting. And then yes. I think and I think it's like a part of a broader conversation about like social justice and power right now. That is definitely a huge topic we could get into. And I will say in my experience in more in areas that don't have as much bicycling infrastructure and that also like are embracing maybe alternatives to transportation, that I have been targeted and had things thrown at me for just riding around. So yeah, so Nikki says that NYPD did that to her. So yeah, so I just want to put it out there that it seems wild and does happen.
Yeah, there's a few different types of targeting, like you talked about. Like I've been ticketed on my bike. I know other people have, and then like NYPD especially are notorious for parking in bike lanes and doing other things that make cycling less safe. So I mean, it's just like I feel like there's a lot less money to extract from cyclists as vehicle users, and maybe there's some, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I mean, we all, I think in this call know the culture of how we're viewed as lesser than by using the bicycle as a vehicle, and how you can kind of relate that to other types of systemic oppression, but it's also ultimately a choice, and that's why it's different. But I think it's more of an equity, I guess, to transportation equity would be the way I would put it, or something like that. But in Houston, Houston was wild because it was the most people I'd ever seen ride bikes, I think. Maybe Portland more percentage, but Houston was like, it didn't make any sense. There wasn't bike infrastructure there when I lived there. There's a huge group just dedicated to installing ghost bikes for people who have been killed. But you go to critical mass and there was 3,000 people there. Any night of the week you go and there'd be a ride to either go eat tacos or to ride like a bunch of miles. Like for anything you can think of, it was happening there. And that's why I loved living there. And it was wild and there was no infrastructure for it. Cars would throw stuff at you, try and run you off the road. They'd run people over. Like it was just really the Wild West. So moving to a much less populated area after that, there's some animosity. Like I've had stuff thrown at me here, but I think it's happened once. Most of the time people are just like, whoa, like, oh, someone's riding a bike. How novel, or like, you know, I don't know. So, and I think a lot of places there's either animosity or there's that like polite indifference if the infrastructure isn't that bad where there's like as much conflict. The infrastructure obviously has so much to do with it.
So infrastructure tied into equity for sure, and culture shift. Dr. Nia, I see your hand raised. Thanks.
Hi,
Hey.
hi everyone. Tara, thank you so much for all of the sharing, especially the images. And I've had the pleasure of being in the space, seeing the space. So it's incredible. And I like honor all of the work that you're doing always. So let me start with that. But second, this is supposed to be a lunch and I'm the only one who's been stuffing my face. I'm looking around and enough is enough with that. I was so relieved. I was like, oh good, it's a lunch. It's not gonna be weird if I'm stuffing my face. And I'm like, nobody else is eating. No, I'm teasing you all. So for those who I haven't met, I'm Dr. Nia Nunn. I serve as the board president of Southside Community Center, and RIBS is a program of Southside, but I teach up at Ithaca College and born and raised in Ithaca. So that's a quick snapshot, but Tara, it's a question / mix of ideas because I actually had the pleasure of spending some time in Elmira this past weekend at the community arts spot. Oh my goodness, first of all, inside was just incredible, but I was telling the story of Southside and Black Girl Alchemist's work. And so I guess my question is about, I love how you brought the plants in and how there's just like connecting with the earth and the people that you've taught me about from Elmira. Elmira has such a history, right? So I wonder if you've brainstormed or if we could brainstorm like where, biking meets community public art meets, literacy programs. I think about even at Southside for Juneteenth, we're going to put out the ABCs of Black history and then link to that, start studying the history of Black people in Ithaca, Black families and things, and how do we use literacy and visuals in spaces where we're walking and riding our bikes, and how can we educate people on the streets, right? So I know I'm learning about people here, but while in Elmira, I was talking about like Mama Scott or Beverly J. Martin or these staples of Ithaca. And I'm like, who are the Mama Scotts of Elmira? Who are the Bev Martins of Elmira? So I'm sharing my passions mixed in with all of it, but just thinking about, I don't know, let's talk. Let's explore, because I'm learning about families and some of the roots of the people of the space, and what are some creative ways of like honoring them or that in public spaces, but that is also about like, communicating biking safety and some of the realities of the space from the people. That's what I love about your work, is really, you're honoring the people of the space. And anyway, so question / comment / just wanting to talk to you because I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, the most direct response to that would be, and then we put this in our grant application of, we want to host community rides. I think the only one we've officially done is we did a moon ride and the Ride of Silence. So we want to have some regular rides like every month on the full moon. And then Ride of Silence is an annual thing. And then we want to do some history rides. And there's like, in Elmira, that I know specifically from living in here a few years, we can easily do a natural history ride, a women's history ride, and a Black history ride. Those are like, so I just feel like easy, like the people here we could go and ride to them and they could just tell us about the stuff here. Some of the local people here, first person I thought of was John W. Jones. There's a house here and a museum, and he was a Black man who became unenslaved and bought a bunch of property and meticulously cared for the Confederate soldiers who passed away in the war camp in Elmira. He buried them and cataloged them. So that's just like a wild story there. And his house was turned into a museum recently. And I don't know if it's reopened yet. Before the pandemic, it was open on Saturday. So just like, that's one stop. The EOP is a community organization here that is mostly Black run and led. And they do, after school programming, feeding kids, literacy volunteers. I used to volunteer with them, just tutor people to read. They do all kinds of stuff. They're the ones hosting Juneteenth here. So like, just another no-brainer, like partner with them. The YWCA, they've already reached out to us to partner with them to use some of their space to store kids' bikes there and do kids' rides. So yeah, and all this stuff is like, I want to first just get a handle on our physical space and get more people to show up so that when we plan and execute these rides, they work really well. The Chemung Valley History Museum here is amazing. The two historians there have published books about Elmira, and they're just hilarious women, and they would, I'm just assuming all these people would be down, and I don't think that I'm wrong. And then another place here that is not here anymore is Green Pastures, and that was a famous jazz club where like really like well-known jazz musicians would come through. It was Black owned. Howard Coleman worked with a professor at Elmira College, and she basically just published like she like dictated an oral history of his about the place, and that's a good one. So just like talking about stuff and honoring that, because that was just that house there and it's unmarked. So there's just ripe with opportunity here, and we're we're programming partners with the River Friends, and there's bike paths along the river, so like a natural history tour. So it's just like those, I'm hoping those things are either later this summer, we'll at least do one of those, or next year, is what I'm thinking. So yeah.
Well, I love this. Well, I've already heard so much cross-pollination, so that's really exciting. I think just having that happen in this space and kind of hearing how community bike spaces just facilitate that inherently, like in their spaces. So I want to address, Tara, I want to have you address one more question, and then we'll kind of formally wrap up, but we'll stay open for folks to ask more questions or chat for usually about 10 or 15 minutes, if that works for y'all. We'd love to have you stay. So Peg put in the chat something that would be super helpful for us in general. It's a Jamboard, which is like I think a new Google feature, but I was very impressed by, because you can make Post-it notes virtually. And so if you would open that link and at some point complete it so that we can do some evaluation, that would be really great. And the last question I wanted to get to that felt like it could be a nice kind of wrap up question. Where did it go? Was Hector had a question that was kind of like, oh yeah, one surprising or unexpected thing from your experience building ECC, I don't know if you're calling it that, or your experience visiting or working in community bike shops. So yeah, something that gives you like a wow or an awe.
I think just like the most not necessarily surprising, but like humbling thing is just how people will just show up and offer what they have or can make immediately. It's just been great. And then for me, one of the when I worked at Ribs, one of the most moving things for me, and like kind of like sad and like hard sometimes, was working with people who were recently incarcerated. So I would make a point to go and get literature that people in Tompkins County, Ithaca, made for people who were recently incarcerated, for resources for them. And you're like, you know, you're working with someone, they're building up a bike because they don't have one, because they just got out, and then they don't come back for a few weeks, and you found out that like there's some minor parole violation or something, and they're right back in, because we all know that the goal isn't for them to stay out a lot of time with enforcement like that. So that was just like, damn, okay, well, we have to put their bike away. Maybe someone else can use it now. So that was really rough. And there's a max and a super max prison in Elmira. So a lot of people move here to be closer to their loved ones who are incarcerated. And then there's a lot of formerly either incarcerated people or people who were in inpatient care for mental health. So just a lot of things like that. And that's where we're going to do our outreach, and I hope where we can serve people. Yeah.
Great. I'm having trouble like seeing all my controls on my screen. So if you see my face, I'm like, all right. I'm gonna just jump back here. Do you all see that blue slide?
Yes.
Cool. So we're gonna send the slides out. There's more information in them that we're not gonna get really into right now. I just wanted to do a shout out. Ribs is reopening. I don't know if they're going to be using Ribs as a name. That might change. But the reopening event will be Sunday, June 20th. So stay tuned for that. Of our most local community shop will be back in action. And I think the best way to learn about that is I've found information on Instagram and social media for Ithaca Southside Pride is the tag there.
Grace, if
And
I may jump in for a hot second and encourage everyone to also come to our Juneteenth celebration on Saturday. And it's from 2 to 8. So it's not the traditional full day festival that starts early in the morning, but it's really a dance party. 80s, 90s, and a little 70s. We're working to try and have beat the record of the largest Soul Train line. So we're shooting for 500. Please help us out down Cleveland Ave. Those are the aspirations. And then I'd love to, through your networks, keep you all posted about some of the events that we have happening in July. A major event, Harriet Tubman Freedom Ride from Southside to Harriet Tubman's home. We'll have a lot of cyclists, a lot of Black cyclists coming to Ithaca, over 200. And so, yes, we would love to have all of you join us. And Grace, I'll keep you all posted on links for those events.
cool. And I'm like, oh, and after this conversation and Tara hearing so much about the community that you're connected with, it seems like there's another opportunity too for like further connection on that. Yeah, and so I just want to, if you look through the slides, you'll see that each community shop that I've looked into and it has like its own mission, and sometimes they're real similar and sometimes they're really different. So the Southside Bike Program mission is to affirm, empower, and foster Black leadership and liberation through bicycling in our community. And I realized, Tara, I don't know if you have a mission statement yet, or if that's what something you're working on. It's a big task, so.
Yeah, not yet. I'll let you know.
Cool. Yeah, keep us posted. All right, and so here is the information for reaching Elmira Community Cycle. And I just want to thank you so much for your time and for sharing this wild experience of the last few months of opening a really awesome community resource and sharing about who you are and where you come from with it. It's been really interesting to me, and I know everybody's been really engaged. So
Yes, Tara, I echo that thanks. After having worked with you for a little while and then lost touch, it's great to see you really following your passion, but not going it alone. You're bringing a wave of people along with you as you follow it, and that I can't imagine anything more powerful or just more satisfying than that. So good job and keep it up.
Thanks for having me.
yeah, so folks want to stay on if you're able to stay on and field a few more questions. I think there were some more, or just chat with folks. We'll be here. So, but if you have to go, maybe you didn't eat your lunch and you need to go eat your lunch, or you have other stuff to do. Okay.
And one other thing we should say, well, two things I'll say. The next Bike Network Tompkins Bike Network session will not be until probably September or October. Grace and I talked it over, and we decided that summer's busy, people are riding, people are living. We will come up with some topics and be back in touch in the fall. And also, I am happy to walk through this evaluation if people haven't used a Jamboard before, and you want to add your comments to the evaluation. I'll stay on and explain how that works. And I'm so glad so many people came. It's great to connect with Paul.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Green.
Tara, I hope Ben and Thomas can connect with you later on and take you up on your generous offer.
Thanks, Crane.
Thomas, are you still on? And Ben?
Yeah, I'm still on. I actually have
Thomas.
a question. Yes. I have a question kind of about ribs. Because I'm thinking one thing I thought about today, like I was on Google Maps and I was looking at like the site and I was thinking of how like, is that a really interesting intersection where it's like, okay, Route 13 is right by it and then like there's Buffalo Avenue and there's no bike lanes present. And I'm just like wondering, I mean, I guess how different transportation modalities like work to make sure ensure the bike shop success? If that's like, if that's correct, I don't know. I don't have words right now.
So you're asking me how I feel about their location?
Yeah, like the location, like how using like different transit options like TCAT or anything like that helps like riders get to the bike shop, because like I feel like it's not like the most accessible when it comes to like biking there in the first place.
Honestly, that we had a survey when people would come in. It was an anonymous survey, so they didn't put their name or anything, but we asked questions like that, and we didn't ask that. So that's a really good idea. Like, how did you get here? I feel like a lot of people just rode their bikes there. Like, they just made it work. A few people would drive their bike in their car if they had one. But
There's also not great parking. There's
no,
like
there's no
also.
park. There's no park. You know, you park. Maybe you would park in Bird Dairy and they wouldn't yell at you. But you know, so and TCAT I am not familiar with. Like if one of their routes goes right past there or not. I don't remember seeing it on that road. But that makes me think I should write down to put that question on our survey. So thank you.
There
And,
is a TCAT bus stop a couple blocks over on Seneca Street, but I do think in terms of like, yeah, if you had a mobility limitation and biking worked for you, but you needed your bike fixed, it's still a little bit of a schlep.
Yeah.
And Thomas, you bring up, lots of interesting connections there. Like the next time that the Ithaca Tompkins bike map is produced, maybe, the community bike shop could be on the map, little things like that. And getting it on Google Maps and that sort of thing. So people know it's another option.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad by asking that question, I'm becoming a pioneer. So thank you.
Yeah, that's what this network is all about. I mean, when Grace and I started this, we thought, well, we just want to get some bike-minded people together, and I won't speak for Grace, but I myself am thrilled with how these ideas just keep churning and new things come out of it. So it's good.
Cool.
And Thomas, congratulations on your Agile Miles scholarship. I think that's fantastic.
Thank you. Like I didn't even know there was like a lot of clout behind it. I just thought it was like a scholarship. So then when people started coming left and right, I was like, oh, okay, cool, thanks.
Awesome.
And Ben, welcome to Cooperative Extension to you too. I work in the Way to Go program, so I'm sure I'll be meeting you guys in person and talking to you soon.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you.
Sarah, it was hearing from you and seeing from you, and I really enjoyed that.
Thanks, Claire.
A lot of good insight. Like I learned so much about the bike shop that I didn't know before. So always about it.
Thanks.
I want to go to bike school now.
It was fun. There's one other that I know of called Barnett, and it's in Colorado, I think. But I really recommend where I went. It was awesome.
Cool. I learned, this much at Lyme, like just enough to kind of be dangerous. And I do my own stuff on my own bike to a point, but I'd love to have the confidence of, having been taught something officially.
They have classes geared toward commuters rather than mechanics, so they have different levels. At least when I went there, so that might be like a good education.
Right. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks for hosting, guys.
Hi, thank you. So
Hey, Claire.
we'll follow up with contact information and everyone will have all the info. And thanks again. Feel free to stay in touch about other ideas for these conversations.
Thanks, so.
So much.
Bye.
Bye.
Hector, thanks for your good questions.
All right. Thanks, Peg.
Okay, thank you, Tara.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Tara.
Bye. I hope to get down there soon, maybe for one of the rides.
Yeah, you're always welcome.
Thanks. See ya. Hi, Margaret. Bye, Margaret.